Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Neal Woodson. Neal is a returning guest, and you might remember him from way back in episode 28. Neal has more than 30 years of leadership experience across a wide range of environments, including restaurants, retail, education, and the hospitality industry. Throughout his career, he has repeatedly experienced the impact of both good and bad management on customers and employees. He's made it his personal mission to make the employee and customer experience more humane by focusing more on human-centered and service-focused leadership. He is the author of The Uncomplicated Coach, which helps leaders learn how to create a more human-centered, service-focused culture. And I'm honored to have him back on the show to talk about the leader's role in customer service. So, Neal, welcome back.
Thank you, John. It's such a pleasure to be back with you. And it seems like it was like weeks ago that we were together, but it was really 3 years ago. So
it does seem like yesterday. Like we've known each other since then. We interact a lot online, but it's been 3 years. I mean, it was July of 2020 that we last met, and we were just talking. It was like the beginning of the pandemic. We were going into this world of uncertainty back then, and now 3 years later, we're still uncertain. So, at least, I don't know. Maybe we are certain. I don't know. But it's good to see you again. And we talked a lot about your book last time, which I love. We're probably get into a little bit today. But one of the things that you are an expert in is the topic of customer service, and something we haven't really covered on the show. And it just my personal experience, I've noticed that customer service just doesn't exist anymore. Nobody cares anymore for you. And I see that more and more with companies. And even though we see that this, there's all these customer experience initiatives going on around companies, but it seems like it's not getting any better. And what's your take on it? What's the problem with customer service these days?
Well, John, this is going to be a relatively long answer, so buckle your seatbelt.
Okay.
But in a lot of the things I've observed over the years, I've seen four things and that are problems, and they bug me. So the first one is misplaced priorities. And I think that begins with a misunderstanding of the purpose of business. If you were to go somewhere and see a whole bunch of business leaders and you ask them, what's the purpose of business? I'm going to venture to say that 9 out of 10 are going to say it's to make money or to make a profit. And I think that's a problem because it kind of puts the cart before the horse. And to me, it's like saying the purpose of life is breathing. And I don't know anybody that sits around and counts their breaths or hoards air, but yet we need to breathe to live. But hopefully we have a more meaningful purpose to our lives than just breathing. And so I think if we look at the purpose of business, you look at any business, every business that I know of is there to help people do something, help people to accomplish something. You have a business. Your business is to help people, get the right gear they need to fix electrical stuff,
Yeah.
And every business is in the business of helping people accomplish things. And I often find it funny that, when we talk about service, people kind of deride it. They put it down, and somebody says, I work in a service job, and they're like, oh, you'll find a real job soon. And we don't make service something that's noble. But little do we know that none of us would be here if it weren't for service, because 100,000 years ago, we had to cooperate and be helpful with each other, or none of us would be here. We're not the biggest, we're not the fastest, we're not the strongest. And without being helpful and service oriented, we couldn't kill the saber-toothed tiger. We couldn't have gotten food. There were so many things that we couldn't do if we hadn't helped each other. So that's the first problem, misplaced priorities, that we put our priorities on a bunch of other stuff, but not service. Second problem is that we create cultures of competition in our workplaces. Walk into workplaces and you see, people being ranked. You see salespeople in having organized competitions against each other. You see departments vying with each other for budget money or for recognition or whatever. And we set up these, and in fact, we unwittingly sometimes encourage competition in our workplaces. But yet we expect people to go out and be all sunny and nice with a customer. And I don't think it works that way. That's like, when I was a kid, there was a kid down the street he was an okay kid, but he had a really bad temper and he would get into a fight in a heartbeat. Well, I went to his house one day and his dad, when he came home, all he did was yell at his kid.
Mm,
Well, it all made sense from that standpoint. So if we create these cultures where people are competing at work, how do we expect them to go out and be cooperative with customers? Third thing is that we put too much attention on technical stuff, on technical competence rather than human competence.
yeah.
And by human competence, I mean what people used to call soft skills, right? Being nice to each other, being compassionate, problem solving, critical thinking. Those things are softer skills. You can't measure them. But we put a lot of emphasis on technical skills, ability, knowledge, the things that you can measure. And I think when we work with humans, you have to have that soft part or it's just not going to work. And then last, there is a belief that training and design are the things that will fix it.
Mm,
My feeling is that doesn't work.
mm,
If my environment does not, if I don't see every day in my environment people serving each other, I'm not going to go out and serve customers.
mm.
That's like when you're a parent. I'm a parent, and I'm sure you probably did this just like I did. You wanted to teach your kids to say please and thank you. But if you sat down with this and said, when you ask for something, you need to say please. And when it's given to you, you say thank you. But if you immediately then go and sit down at your dinner table and you never say please or thank you, that's not going to stick.
Yeah.
So all the training in the world is not going to stick if they don't see it demonstrated around them on a regular basis. So to me, those are 4 big problems. And we're not solving those problems. We're doing everything but solving those problems.
Yeah, I think you're spot on because I see all those things, in my time in corporate. I definitely saw a lot of those things. In fact, we started our business only because we knew that the big companies in our industry were failing when it came to customer service. And we said, all we have to do is just be a little bit better than them and we'll get all their business. And that's exactly what's happened. We answer the phone. We provide a quote within 24 hours. We ship faster than anybody else in the industry. And suddenly we have all this business and more business than we can handle. And all we're doing, we have similar products, and all we've done is just add a little bit of customer service. Not even a lot, like just a little bit better. And people are like, "Oh, this is so much." We're switching, and it seems like like you said, we're focused on profitability and costs and sales growth and orders, the numbers of business, but you need customer service if you're going to get the numbers. What we've learned is that when you ramp up your customer service, the business comes, and more business than you can handle if you're good at what you do. I mean, we look at Chick-fil-A, for example, as you compared to all other fast food chains, they've put customer service being a priority, and look at the amount of sales they have per store compared to the other people. So if you place customer service a priority, the numbers come, but we don't do that for some reason. Just in your opinion, is there some sort of like magic bullet that's going to fix this? Because it seems like we're kind of messed up. And I don't know if we can get back on track, but is there something that can fix it?
That's a loaded question, really, but it's one that I get asked all the time. And I'll tell you a little story. I was on the golf course, and this few years ago, on the golf course with some buddies of mine. It was just 3 of us, and we needed a 4th to make up a foursome. Well, there was a guy waiting with the starter to see if he could join somebody. And the guy said, "Yeah, come over here and join this group. Here's a threesome." We didn't know the guy. Fine. We started playing. And as usually happens when you do this, you start talking about, so, you have a family, you live around here, what do you do for a living? And of course, when it comes around to me, well, what do you do for a living? Well, I do a lot of training and coaching in leadership and customer service. And immediately this guy says, "Oh my gosh, you can help me. I have my own company. Tell me what I need to something I can tell my employees so that they will deliver the greatest customer service. I mean, what is the thing? What is the one thing?" And I said, "Well, there's probably not one thing, but if there was, it would have to be this." And I looked up and I said, "You have to care. You
Mm.
have to care. And I said, and he looked at me and kind of like, well, is that it? I think he was waiting for some big, monumental thing. And I said, well, there's a little more detail to it. I mean, you have to care not only about the work you do, but you have to care about the people you're doing it for.
Mm.
You need to care about their well-being. And two, everybody in your organization needs to care, from the CEO to your administrative people to your management, all the way to your customer facing employees. Everybody's got to care, and they have to care about the people they serve. They need to care about the quality of their work and the well-being of all those people they serve, because everybody serves somebody. Said, so if you can make that happen, you're on the right track.
So yeah, it's interesting. Care. That's a big one that we don't really do a good job of in general. I mean, when I look at, I did 22 years in corporate, and um, care is a word that's like soft. We were talking about earlier. It's a soft skill, which seems to be really hard for corporate bosses to be able to put it in place, right? They can do everything, inventory reduction, quality improvement plans, downsizing. They got all that down, but caring seems to be a struggle for them. So, yeah, I mean, so what's the leader's role in it? So, like, you're talking about this guy who runs his own company. I run my own company. How can the leader impact customer service? How does it come down from on high?
Well, it's a lot like parenting, actually. But I'll give you a model that's had a lot of influence on me. I'm sure you know who Stephen Covey is, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, The Eighth Habit, First Things First, very, very influential to millions of people all over the world. And Stephen Covey had a model. He called it See, Do, Get.
Mm.
And there's another company that's out there right now called the Arbinger Institute. They wrote a book called The Outward Mindset. They wrote Leadership and Self-Deception. And they have a model called Mindset, Behavior, and Results. Roughly, they're the same model, right? And what it describes is that what we see and what we hear on a regular basis influences what we do, our behaviors. And those behaviors directly drive the results that we get.
Mm.
So if we think about that model for a second, we think about what are the messages and the models that people see all the time, And so if you think as a parent, what kind of messages and models do you want to deliver to your children? Again, we go back to, I want you to say please and thank you. And then you've got to do it, right?
Mm.
And then when you do it and they see you do it, and that's the environment that they live in, what are the chances they're going to do it?
Mm.
Probably pretty high, right? So if you ask me very simply, what is the leader's role? They need to be the message and the model. They need to be the ones showing up like a parent to do those things, to try to influence their kids to do the same thing. I'll tell you another story real quick is that goes along with this. Years ago, my daughter and my kids were in the back seat. My wife's over here and we're driving, and I'm looking for something. I couldn't find it. And I'm getting upset, and thinking we passed it. Oh my gosh, whatever. And so I start saying some words I shouldn't say. And so all of a sudden my daughter chimes and she says, Daddy. And I'm like, Hannah, I'm busy. I'm trying to find this damn place. I'm just saying stuff I shouldn't say. She said, Daddy, you've always told us never to say things like that.
Oh yeah.
And so all of a sudden, I look over and the better angels of my nature show up and say, you better come up with the right answer to this.
Yeah.
And so I pulled over and I said, you're right. And I'm wrong. You need to call me out whenever I do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the lesson for me was, you really do have to model what you want, the expectations. And so if we want our employees to have it, we've got that's what the leader's responsibility.
Yeah, I agree. It's reinforcing those principles. Like as a parent, our the lessons are caught, not taught, right?
Yeah.
So they're seeing our kids are watching us. What are we gonna do? And like versus what we say, right? And I know, like for example, when we started our company, we said we were going to be a different kind of supplier. And one of the ways we were going to be different was that if a customer has a problem with our products, we just take it back, no questions asked, and refund the money or replace it. We don't because the other companies in our industry tend to argue with them. Well, you probably installed it wrong. And so there's always a big fight. We said, we're going to, no questions asked. But the problem comes when those things come up and, there's a $10,000 part coming back and they look at, my employees look at me, are we going to do that? Are we going to take this back? And I have, and that's when the leader that's the moment. When
Yeah.
you say, we can't do that, that's too much money, then it's over. Like your strategy is over. And so that's, because I've had that happen to me, and I've had to look at them and say, our principle is we're going to take it back no matter what. And I'm in the back of my head, I'm going, this is going to hurt, but it's going to, it's important for our culture. It's important for what the principles we're trying to set. So the leader is, as you're saying, is like, has to establish and maintain that good behavior by their actions.
Right. And they have to be the thing that people look to and say, okay, that's how this is supposed to look. This is how
Yeah.
this is supposed to. I mean, do you think that you were talking about Chick-fil-A? You think those employees walk around saying my pleasure
Right.
if they never hear it? No, their manager says my pleasure to them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that manager's boss says my pleasure to him, so that
Mm.
it trickles down, and so it's part of the culture. That's how they do things. You know.
That's yeah, that's it seems easy, when you hear it, when you look at the financial performance of a Chick-fil-A store typically compared to all of their rivals, you would think that everybody would emulate that and put that kind of service model in place because it makes sense financially. Ignore everything else. If you're a greedy financial company, you're going to want these things in place. You should want to replicate it. So why haven't the other guys replicated their model, I wonder?
Because they don't believe it.
Yes.
They don't believe it, and you know, I can't tell you how many times I get asked, "Oh, prove it,"
Yeah.
and I just tell them, "Go to the American Customer Satisfaction Index." They actually run a portfolio of stocks of their highest service performers, the companies that in their index are their highest performers, and they've done this for over 20 years. And those performers outperform the S&P 500 by over 600%.
It seems it seems obvious that
Hmm.
that the leaders should be thinking about this if they want to have greater financial success in their businesses. It seems yeah, like you said, it seems obvious. If you're going to outperform the S&P, if you're going to outperform your rivals is in the restaurant industry, you'd think you'd want to try to replicate that, or try to even one up the Chick-fil-A model, but yet you don't see anybody really doing it, which is really interesting.
And keep in mind, they're not open one day a week.
Yeah, I know. And no, that's the interesting thing. Yeah, they're down one day a week and still
Still
outperforming their
outperform
rivals.
everybody else.
Yeah, that is wild. So are there, I mean, we talked about like the leader's role. We talked about this idea of caring. Are there structural changes that need to take place in businesses to be able to have a more customer service or a customer friendly type environment?
Yeah, I think, it a lot of what we've already discussed, but we need to align everybody to service as the mission of the company, that's our priority. That I think businesses need to do that. And I think leaders, again, they need to be of service to their teams and encourage cooperation and collaboration internally. So they need to encourage that spirit of we're helping each other. And then this is going to get kind of weird, but I think that we need to look at every delivery system that we have, and that includes not only people, but the places, the environments that we use, like whether it's online or brick and mortar or whatever, processes that we use as to deliver our value, and products. And we need to ensure that, just like people, that they do their jobs technically, but that they demonstrate care as well. And I know that sounds weird because we're talking about inanimate objects, but think about it this way. Imagine, if you will, that you own an auto repair shop and you have a waiting room, right? So what's the functional job of a waiting room? It's got to be a place where people can sit down and wait for their car. So really, to be functional, you could just put a bunch of old hard plastic chairs in a room, and there you go. It does the job.
And Jiffy Lube does that, by the way. I just
But,
the other day
but
I was
if
over there.
but if you wanted it to demonstrate care, how
Yeah.
could we up that ante and demonstrate care? Well, those chairs could be really comfortable. You could have a TV on the wall so people had something to watch while they're waiting. You could have some coffee in there. It's not 3 days old, but relatively fresh coffee, and that's how a place, and in this case, it's a waiting room, an inanimate object can demonstrate care. So imagine if you're in your operation, everything you did that delivered value to a customer demonstrated care. So not only does it do its job, so maybe it's a process, maybe it's a system that a customer has to go through. What if it didn't just do the process, but it did it in such a way that it was really easy and almost as if the customer never really had to lift a finger? That would demonstrate care for the well-being of the customer. So how would it change what we do if we did that in just about everything we did? We really thought about, how do we make something not just functional, but how do we make it friendly?
That's powerful. I think about it like, how many times have you gone to a website of a company, you're trying to contact them, and they've hidden any phone number or how to reach them? They purposely do it so you can't find any phone number.
Oh, yeah.
That's one. And the other thing is when you get on, the automated lines and you have to listen to, a long litany of things, and you're just trying to talk to somebody, right? And
I just want a person, right? Yeah.
right. And so one of the things we did on our automated line is we say the first thing right away. If you want to speak to somebody, press 0. We say that right away before we say anything else. And so we know, because that's the frustrating thing. You have to listen to this menu, and then it's this, and then you press 1, and then you get into the next menu and the next menu. Well, that's not customer friendly. That creates, by the time you get to talk to somebody, you're frustrated, you're angry, right? And like you said, it's a structure. Is the structure customer friendly? Yeah, I've never really thought about that. But that's right on board. That's exactly right. And so
this goes
this
goes right back to what I was talking about before about the human competencies and the technical ones. It's the same principle, right? We focus very much on, those chairs do their job. Yeah, but they're not, but from a human perspective, they suck.
Yeah.
Right. I want to get out of here.
Yeah.
But you go somewhere where they have really nice, comfortable chairs. I mean, think about Starbucks and the difference between Starbucks and, a lot of other places. You go to Starbucks, there's big comfy chairs. They got music playing. They got Wi-Fi. Yeah. They've made it really friendly.
Yeah. And so you're going to go there and you're going to pay $8 for a cup of coffee because it's a friendly environment.
Absolutely. That you made my life easier. You made my life better. I'm willing to pay for that.
Oh, that's really, really interesting to think about, is not just the people, but the structure and the environment. That's I've never thought of it that way. That's a really deep, a deep idea. I really like that one a lot. I mean, to take a company and to shift it to be more customer focused, it's a big deal. I mean, if a company is not, to be able to change it, it's probably a big company would be very difficult to do that. But what can the average employee do to create a more service focused culture, a more friendly culture?
Yet again, another big giant question. But before I answer that question, I want to clarify one thing. I rarely use the term customer centric or customer focused.
Okay.
Because my belief is that when you label something like customer centered or customer focused or employee focused, somebody gets left out. So if your company's employee focused, well, okay, you're leaving out your customers. But if your company's customer focused, you're leaving out your employees. So I like to say companies need to be service focused.
Nice.
Because when you're focused on how you can best serve people, doesn't matter whether they're your customers or your employees. You're going to serve both.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to be, right? So to answer your question, I think one of the first things people can do is, if somebody's really interested and they say, I really want to start moving my company in this direction. So you're employee number 100, right? and you're, that to your boss, he doesn't even know your name. So you work in this cubicle. I think you got to start by having the conversations, not with your boss, but with other people that you work with. Say, this is something I'm really interested in. I think that we can better serve our customers if we better serve each other. See what starts coming up, and then find the people that go, God, I love that idea. And you find your allies and you create your little army. And your army is not to start a revolution, it's to start an evolution, right? It's to start evolving your company. And you get these people together and say, okay, so how can we all better serve the people around us and start driving change?
Yeah.
And so as people, you probably were, you're old enough to remember this. There used to be an ad for, I think it was for Revlon or somebody, where a woman came on and she said, I told two friends about it, and they told two friends about it, and they told two friends about it. And I think it starts to pick up steam like that. And it's almost like, and I hate to use this word, but it's like a virus, right? It starts with one person and it spreads to two more and two more and two more. And eventually a lot of people start catching on and saying, this is something that's really working for us, And eventually somebody who has a voice and who has some power says, what are they doing over there in the Northeast region? They're knocking it out of the park. And he says, we need to do this all over the company. And before you know it, you're starting to shift the company. But it takes time. It takes persistence.
I really like that. I've heard the expression like islands of excellence, as I've heard, whereas one way to affect change in a big company where you're not, in the top tier is to create an island of excellence that gets, like you said, gets the upper management noticing like, why is this factory, 10x better than our other factories, right? And I think when you do that, you can impact change just by creating whatever your sphere of influence is, right? Start there and start making that sphere excellent, make it an island of excellence that gets noticed. And I think you can make an impact even if you don't have the title.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think, like I said, it's like a virus. I hate during the current climate using that word, but it's kind of like that.
It's a good virus.
Yeah, it's a good virus, right? It's the friendly virus.
It's the friendly virus. So, what I'm hearing is that leadership and service, they intersect, right? So it's this providing the right atmosphere, leading by example. It's reinforcing the principles. It's behaviors that are seen by the employees. What are some areas where service and leadership connect in your opinion?
Well, I think people oftentimes use the term servant leadership, and it's not a term I like. And the reason I don't like that term is because the term servant leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. They immediately kind of turn up their nose. And because servant typically has a connotation that somebody is above somebody else. And I think if we change the way we see that, if we look at it as I'm being of service to someone rather than being in service of someone. See, when I'm of service to you, I'm bringing you value. And that doesn't put me on a lower plane nor a higher plane. It means I'm bringing something that you need to try to help you succeed rather than I'm below you, I'm in service of you, you tell me what to do. I don't think it's that at all. I think it's about leaders have to bring value, because to me, the definition of leadership is helping a group of people succeed so that they can make a mission succeed. That to me is what leadership is all about. So it's incumbent upon the leader to be of service to their team, to bring them value, not to bring them orders and rules, but to bring them valuable stuff that they can use so they can succeed in their roles. Because if they succeed, the mission succeeds.
Yeah.
So that's to me where a big piece where leadership ties into service. But I also think that if you are in a service role, let's say you're a service provider, I think you have to think like a leader to really be good at delivering service. Because to me, serving, at some point in service, you've got to be a person who's willing to step up and say, I want to help you. And the willingness to step up and take on serving and helping someone else, that's leadership. That's the kind of person I'd follow, right? So you kind of have to have a leadership mindset to serve well. Yeah. So you lead to serve and serve to lead. They kind of run together, they intersect.
Oh, I love that. That's really good. That's really good. And I feel the same way about the servant leadership side. I've thought about that a lot, and because I think, you know, I think, I always say leadership is a people business, and it is, but I think it's the people and the mission, and the great leaders get the and part right, so they're focused on the people and the mission. And when I think about my time in the Navy, we were really good at that, the people and the mission, and you can't just abandon the mission for the people. And I think servant leadership says it's people, 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 which is good, but you got to accomplish the mission. That's why we're
Right.
here,
Yeah.
and I think that's it's good that you point that out. I really like that. So your book, The Uncomplicated Coach, has been out for a few years now. What are you working on these days?
Well, I actually am working on a new book, and it is largely about a lot of what we've talked about tonight. So I've given away some of the plot, but
Great.
um, I'm still in kind of the phase of outlining and research, and you know how research is. You find something, you start going down that road, and it leads you down five more,
Yes.
right? And so, well, okay, now that I knew this, I got to research that, and then I got to research that and that and that, and you kind of get into this place of rabbit hole after rabbit hole, and I'm kind of at that point where it's like, okay, at what point am I going to stop and just say, okay, I'm done. I've got the research. I'm just going to write. So I'm not quite there yet, but I'll get there. So, but
Well,
that's the big thing, kind of working on.
that's awesome. And when it's done, we'll have you back for session 3 then, and go and go over it. So hopefully it won't be 3 years from now.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah. So Neal, this has been great to have you back on. Good to see you again. And I really appreciate everything you pointed out. It was really good stuff. And I think, it's one area we really haven't covered in the show up to this point. So customer service and the leader's role in customer service, very important. And I really like what you talked about in terms of this idea of not just the leader and the activities and the behaviors, but the whole structure around your company and being and being a service orientation. And I really, really like that a lot. Neal, how can people find out more about you, your book, and all the things that you're working on?
Easiest way is I've got a website, nealwoodson.net, nealwoodson.net. I'm sure you'll put it in notes or something. That's the easiest way. Also, people should feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with people. And if they want to go further than that and we have a conversation, I can get them my email address through LinkedIn. I post a lot on Twitter and Instagram at Neal Woodson. And yes, I wrote a book, The Uncomplicated Coach, and it's available wherever you buy books, Amazon and all those. You can get it in print or you can get it, electronically, however you like to do your books. So.
Yeah, outstanding. Such a great book. And if you go back and listen to our first episode, we talked a lot more about the book, and I love the book. It's one of my favorites. Thank you, Neal, for coming on. We're going to put links in the show notes for all of Neal's resources. I highly encourage you follow Neal, because Neal is my go-to guy when it comes to service. And I love every day he's putting out new content. And it's going to make you think about how service plays in the role of your job as a leader. Highly encourage you look at that. Neal, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing all this. And man, thanks for the past 3 years. I've learned a lot from you just by interactions with you online. And thanks for coming back on the show. It's really good to see you. And let's get you back when that new book comes out.
I would love to, John. And everything you said right back at you. I've learned a ton from you, and your 2 books are fantastic. So actually you've got 3 books, but
yeah,
the 2, the one that's not the guided journal, those 2 books are fantastic. So people should, go out and find those 2 books as well. So, but great talking to you again.
Great talking with you as well. And thank you very much for coming back on the show.
Sure.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.